This podcast is brought to you by Kiwi Design, the leader in MetaQuest and VR accessories. And now you can deck out your device while supporting the podcast. The MetaQuest 2 is a great headset, but do you ever feel things could be a bit more comfortable? Well, we have the solution for you. With lens protectors, controller grips, face covers, head straps, link cables, headset stands, and more, including my two personal favorites, the top version controller grips with added weight and an extended handle, and the Kiwi upgraded Elite strap. Let's be real, we've all whacked our controller. Don't be the guy messaging Oculus support for your own mistake or waiting weeks for an out-of-stock controller. Visit the link in our show notes to prepare yourself today. After visiting the link in our show notes, make sure to use the promo code Ruff Talk VR at checkout, all one word, to take full advantage of your savings. And make sure to click the link in our show notes so the podcast gets credit and you help support us. Remember, whatever you need, Kiwi has you covered. Hey, welcome to this episode of Ruff Talk VR. We got a full party today. Joining us today, we have from top right corner. You know, this is actually two of the guests today. Their second time being on the show. Previously, we had them on before, but they brought another friend with them today from the team, so this will be real good. We have Dan, Nathan, and Eric from top right corner. Like I referenced a moment ago, Dan and Eric, this is their second time, but this is Nathan's first time, so this is going to be a lot of fun. Guys, in case the listeners, they didn't catch your first interview and they've never played, you know, the great game that is Atlas Mystery.
Yeah, we're biased on that one.
Yeah, it was actually a nominee for our App Lab Game of the Year. Do you mind to introduce your guys self to our listeners and also tell them a little bit about what you do over at Top Right Corner and Atlas Mystery?
Yeah, Eric, how about you kick it off?
Yeah. So good to talk to you guys again. This is Eric. I was one of the producers and the writer on Atlas Mystery. So I don't work directly for Top Right Corner, but I work with them on a lot of projects. Dan and I we're involved in some other entertainment things, movies and games and such. So we kind of have a long-standing history kind of collaborating together through his company, Top Right Corner.
And this is Dan Clifton. I own Top Right Corner. Top Right Corner creates original games, but we also create VR training and other educational products in the VR sort of universe, AR, mixed reality. And I also work with Eric, as he said, at Welcome Villain. I've produced a number of different films and horror projects, including theatrical releases like Brightburn. And so my focus really is on developing products for Top Right Corner and games, but also having them combine with what we're doing at Welcome Villain, our horror studio.
Yeah, and I'm Nathan. I'm the lead developer at Top Right Corner and led development for Atlas.
Awesome. So I know some of these questions might seem like repeats for you guys. I promise I haven't forgotten our prior conversation.
No, it's for the new listener.
Yeah, just for the new listeners. I always like to have each episode as kind of a standalone, not really force them to have to go back and listen to, the past episode. So do you mind to give a refresher for anybody who didn't catch the first episode, how long Top Right Corner has been around and kind of how the studio even came? Yeah, how did it come to be?
Yeah, I can jump in on that. So Top Right Corner has been around in many different versions over the past 7 or 8 years. I originally had Top Right Corner as I was making films. Top Right Corner was a short form content company that I had in both New York and LA. And then as soon as I got into gaming and got into XR content, sort of around the time of the first Oculus dev kit in 2014, 2015, that's when everything really started focusing on creating VR content. And everything for Top Right Corner through about 2019 was based on entertainment tie-ins with different film studios. And then I brought on some other partners in 2019, and we started focusing also on industrial and educational training in VR, as I mentioned earlier. So right now we are focused on making other games as well as Atlas, and working on those training products for different industries. So we've been in the VR space, I guess, since it was in its new version in 2014, 2015. So coming up on 9 years of that space.
Yeah. And to give the quick summary of kind of how this whole collaboration started. So back around the earlier days of Top Right Corner, I was working at some kind of horror skewing film studios. So I was working at Blumhouse Productions at the time when Dan was actually producing a film that we ended up releasing through the studio. So, we were just kind of hearing like, oh, what's this cool thing, virtual reality? And he kind of came in and as part of the film that he had produced, had captured a bunch of material that actually allowed us through the studio to hire him to create a VR escape room experience called Belko VR in order to kind of promote the release of the movie. So that was the first time that we kind of had this like movie slash VR kind of tie-in collaboration. And we'd done a few other things with I worked at some other film studios, and we did some other things with Dan and his company kind of in the like VR kind of 360 video space. And Atlas was the first time when kind of independent of kind of all the marketing and stuff that we were doing, that we decided to team up to create this escape room game from the ground up. That was a fully original concept, completely new IP that wasn't kind of based on a studio release or anything.
No, makes sense. And since the release of Atlas, has all of the film stuff kind of been put on hold, or is that side of things still pumping out?
Oh no,
yeah,
that side is going.
Yeah, I think I saw
Full
some
force.
stuff earlier at the end of last year about winning a new release that just came out, maybe some awards as well. Is that right?
Yeah, well, since the release of Atlas, I mean, so much of what we were doing at TRC did grow sort of over COVID times, and now it's sort of balancing out where it was a little bit harder to make films, and that world was kind of thrown upside down. Whereas game development has been remote or can be done pretty easily in that way for a while. So I think the film side has actually grown tremendously since Atlas, and Welcome Villain has acquired a few films that we're putting out this year. And our first original film is coming out in the first half of 2023. And Top Right Corner is making a VR game in conjunction with that we'll get into a little bit later. But the film side has completely, I wouldn't say grown, but has kind of gone back to normal in the past year, because with sort of COVID subsiding and everything else kind of getting back to relative normal, the film side has kind of done the same thing.
That's freaking awesome. It kind of
that put a smile every time they say film studio. I smile.
Well, for one, I always like to hear about game developers we love, having some success and things going well. But it also reminds me a lot of like Mighty Coconut with Lucas Martel and that studio coming from an film animation background, and then Walkabout being kind of a pandemic side thing.
There's a lot of it seems to be I'll blame the pandemic. I mean, flat out, it changed course for a lot of people, and it seems that some of that, I'll say quote unquote Hollywood type market, saw an opportunity, and it's cool to see the talent come from that. So
oh yeah. And besides the film stuff, in case our listeners haven't played it, do you want to tell them what Atlas Mystery is? Like I said, we're biased. This was one of our favorite App Lab games. Like I said, nominee for App Lab Game of the Year. So for us, it's a game that should be on the official Quest store.
We'll
without
still
a
say
doubt.
it to this day. Yeah,
I'll die on that hill. It's just a good experience. I love puzzle games. I love escape rooms. But it's got a really unique setting, film level production, I'd say. So yeah, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about what the game actually is?
Yeah, so Atlas Mystery is an escape room style puzzle game. It's set in a 1940s era movie palace where you are investigating the circumstances kind of around this Hollywood tragedy that occurred in the theater, where a famous film director was kind of murdered kind of years before you are kind of set to start this investigation of the theater. And a lot of it was inspired by the kind of extravagance and decor of old Hollywood movie palaces. There was a very specific era of kind of glamorous Hollywood that we played into, because our favorite thing about VR is transporting people to kind of worlds and environments that you can't normally access in real life. So there are lots of kind of VR escape rooms out there, but when we started designing Atlas, we thought the differentiator was that, you know, in normal escape rooms, there's kind of a sense of scale and a sense of physics and kind of intricate items and such that you can't really play with in real life that you can in VR. So that was kind of, that informed every decision, you know, that there's projector puzzles, there's light puzzles, there's insane kind of like, you know, physics that you can't accomplish in real life, but you can in VR, with like the scale of rooms changing and new doorways appearing and all that kind of stuff. That's just so much fun in the video game world that you can't really experience in a real escape room. So that's Atlas in a nutshell.
Well, and it also tells a good story.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah,
It's hard to tell a story like that in escape
a lot
room.
of escape rooms are they're pretty one-dimensional, and
They're just the puzzles and
objective and
get out of the tomb.
Yeah, it's
Right.
there's not an actual story that has you also compelled as well as the puzzle aspect.
Yeah, to me, as good as the escape room one was, which was obviously very good, to
Uh-huh.
me, the story was a big part of the reason that I feel it should be on the official store.
Yeah, it's not a one-dimensional thing here. It's like,
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about some of the puzzles, but I won't.
It's almost like a puzzle movie. Like
there was one that was just ridiculously hard.
Yeah.
Said and done.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
crying.
And that was very big. That was a very big point for us too, was, you know, there's a lot of just very straightforward escape the room games, or maybe it's, you know, you're stuck in a basement, like a serial killer's basement or something like that. But we really wanted it to play out like a movie. And I guess it kind of speaks to our backgrounds too, where there is a plot that you are kind of unraveling as you go through this room, you know, or go through the multiple rooms of the theater. It's not just a very straightforward, like there's a ticking clock, you know, you're gonna get killed if you don't get out in 60 minutes or whatever it is. It feels more cinematic, and there's a much bigger narrative to investigate. And I think, you know, we've had people play through the game multiple times now, and, you know, every time they go back, they discover new documents, they discover new artifacts, and they kind of start piecing together like, oh, I actually didn't realize how, you know, intricate this kind of story is woven together.
Yeah, we're
Yeah, and it is a
junkie-
big throwback to our film background too. You know, I think in terms of some of the specific pieces of film equipment from the 1940s, and with film splicers, and with, you know, 16 millimeter projectors and cameras and everything else like that. You know, we kind of made something around what we know, and we're huge film history buffs, and Nathan here is also a huge horror buff as well. So in terms of that film knowledge, we were really excited to put that story together.
Now for Nathan, real quick, do you have a film background as well? Or are you coming in
No, I
strictly
don't have
development?
a film background necessarily. I've seen way too many films. I've watched a movie every night for the past like 15 years. So I've watched thousands of movies. So in that way, I have a film background.
All right, 'cause I was curious, like being the guy who's the lead developer, correct? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's got to be just the whole studio setup in my mind is probably different than, let's say, Studio B. So you're working with two essentially movie making folks. It's, you know, were there any challenges in trying to get that vision that was being laid across into the actual game?
No, I think it worked real well. I mean, we know all the terms and stuff. I think it is funny when we do have a meeting with people that aren't as film savvy, and Dan or Eric has to be like, hey, do you guys know what this word means? Like, is this a common phrase, or is this something only used in the film industry? But no, it was great. I mean, Eric. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
I guess MacGuffin comes to mind, right? With that one.
Yeah.
That's a good example.
Yeah, that was the word of the day in our last meeting.
Yeah. But yeah, no, and Eric brought a great document, was like, hey, here's what I want to have in the game. And he brought it to me and was like, okay, give me, like, be real with me. How much of this is possible? Like, how much of this can we do from like a technical standpoint? How much of this like will just simply not work on the quest? Like, be real with me. And luckily, most of what he wanted was able to be done. And hopefully more of it can be done in the future.
No, well,
Yeah.
hats off. I mean, because we always say that you can't have mistakes in any sort of puzzle game. It can't exist, or it's going to take away from the whole experience. So for everything that's involved in this to all work is like
with no glitches.
Yeah. I mean, I'm admittingly biased.
Yeah, we reviewed it.
Freaking loved it from day one.
Yeah, we've screamed at the top of the hill every time App Lab games that should be on the store come up. This is one of the ones.
But we put it in the 2023 must be in the store, or else we're going to start getting
I mean, and kind of
angry.
Well, thank you.
Oh yeah,
we don't want you guys to die on that hill. Like you said, that's a hill to die on. I think a huge focus for us this year. We have some other games coming out, some other stuff that we're working on, but a big focus is just we're going to go back to Atlas. We're going to do some updates, but a big focus from us as a studio is just what do we need to get? What do we need to do to get on the store? And we've had some conversations, and we can talk about. Obviously, there's the Shadow Council at Meta that meets under the full moon every month, and this is all true. And there's certain metrics that you have to hit to get there. So we can share what we've learned. We have no idea if it's real or not, but I think that your listeners would find it interesting.
I would definitely. We even made comment. I think you even asked Chris Pruitt if there was like
a Shadow Council.
Yeah, Shadow Council that'll somehow pick. No, we couldn't. I mean, we know that there's technical aspects that they require from and that's where we usually go south, because we don't have game developers' data to be like, oh, well, it's as simple as they don't have the frame rate, so they haven't fit the criteria. Sure. But it's like when I play the game, it's pretty freaking flawless. No, and with the lighting and there's the dust, and it's like, come on, man.
And then what I don't understand is they put an emphasis that they want like story based content, which just checks the box. And you look at like the top games, at least in my opinion, but they've won Meta's Game of the Year as well. The top style games, it's like Red Matter, The Last Clockwinder. It's like people like these narrative driven puzzle games.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Atlas is.
Yeah, I don't understand.
And there's not an oversaturation of them on the store either. So it's like, it's what consumers like. It's what Meta likes. It's what tends to win Game of the Year. Why is it not on the store? I don't get it. Yeah. So what's the insight that, whether, 100% accurate or not, that you guys have kind of discovered through the past year of trying to get on the store, and rightfully so?
No, well, thank you. I think a few different things, which is just heard sort of conflicting info. Some people say that when you submit through App Lab, it does go through the right people, and someone will, like, there's one review process, right? Whereas other people have said it's actually not exactly true, because as they try to accelerate going through App Lab to be faster, you sort of need a sponsor. Like, you sort of need to go into the process saying, hey, I'm submitting for App Lab this month. Here's our deck. Here's our roadmap. Here's what we're doing. Keep an eye on this, and take this out of the general queue to put into the main store queue. So we've sort of heard, and we obviously didn't have that when we submitted Atlas originally. So we've heard those two things. I think separately, what we've heard is that to get Meta's attention generally, and we've heard this from a few different sources, is that you need to get to 150 reviews and at least 20,000 sales. I don't think it's entitlements, which means keys versus plus sales. I think it means 20,000 in sales to do that. And then that will trigger Meta sending you an email for an official review. So I don't know if it's ipso facto, you have 150 reviews and suddenly it's like an achievement in a game where suddenly you just get one more download and it just automatically is triggered in consideration. But that's the level of support that they like. And from what I've heard, they really just want it to be this free-for-all where there's no information and you just have to market your game and try and game the system to get as many downloads as possible. And then that will elevate it to getting on the main store, or at least to really start that process.
A bit of a double-edged sword, because I can see them going, we want to see that a game's profitable before we,
Yeah, I kind of understood that a little.
But on the other side, I can also see hey, it's hard to be profitable if people
we
don't
know
see
they definitely put all the onus of marketing onto the developers to be like, it's, it's your show, not ours.
Yeah. So whether or not I 100% agree on it, it seems like their mentality is we want to see if it's profitable without us. And then obviously if they can do it without us, then it's going to be profitable when we sign off on it too.
Well, we know they get a percentage, so
I think they get the same percentage for App Lab and official store, so they're winning.
really?
So they're winning either
so
way.
it's a win-win.
But I see both sides. Like I can see them having that mentality, but at the same time, you know, it is hard to hit X amount of sales.
Listen, I get it for things that are under development,
Mm-hmm.
where they're, you know, just there's some, you know, they're janky, they're beta, they're whatever. But
Mhm.
when it's a finished product and it's like legit a step above the rest, right?
Mhm.
Should it not be recognized for that in some capacity?
I agree.
And there's no way that someone's going to say, "Oh, I played this," who works for Meta,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
what the hell are you going to have fault with?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I see kind of their point to a degree, but I also see like there's a thriving VR market that would probably gobble it up at a better rate if they knew it existed than saying, "Look, all that onus is on you to promote it." And it's tough. It's a really tough example of, I guess, the worst case scenario for a good game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, a lot of business is aligning incentive structures just in general. And I think the issue that we have in this sort of non-alignment of incentive structures is that between Steam, Viveport, and Quest, we have grossed back a portion of the budget, call it 35%, within the first 8 months. Now, for us, we're not incentivized to continue to develop the game because we don't know if we'd ever get on the main store. So how can we, to our investors and our partners and everybody else, how can we continue to develop something? And maybe, you know, we have a few things in the works with some outside assistance and everything else. So we will do that. But I mean, on a general rule of, if we are recouping against the original investment, how can we double down to improve things and guess to try to get it on the main store when we have no idea if that's actually going to happen because those criteria aren't clear. So developers in our position, which I think there's quite a few, we're not incentivized to make the games better because we have no idea if it's actually going to work out in that way. So that's
Right.
just to kind of give you a direct snapshot of the situation.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
It's as real as it's going to get.
yeah,
too.
that makes complete sense too. It's like there's a cost to you to make content. You have to pay Nathan. You guys have to keep the lights on too. It's not like snap your fingers and an AI bot makes the game in 2 seconds. It's not like that.
No,
So it totally,
makes total sense.
yeah, totally understandable.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is we love the game that we've created. You know, VR players love the game that we've created. Reviews are great, and we are happy to kind of talk about how we do have a roadmap for 2023 to bring a lot more into Atlas that I think is going to be really, really exciting for both new players and people who have already played the game. So, you talk about the kind of narrative component of the game being a standout, and we actually have plans to really significantly improve on that, with some additional animation, with some new kind of opening and ending puzzles that I think people are going to really, really have fun with. And then bringing in some other kind of polish factors that we really wanted to early on, but we just we're a little bit hamstrung with resources and such, because we put a lot of effort into QCing the game and making sure that it did have that level of polish that you guys talked about. But things like voice acting and taking some of the narrative stuff that was really more confined to like finding notes and objects, but making it a bit more like cinematic with some more polished kind of ghostly animations and that kind of stuff, including both a really fun kind of opening and ending sequence that I think is going to be really interesting for some people to keep it as vague as possible. But yeah, I mean, we're excited we plan to continue supporting the game, and we have the means to be able to do that just based on some of the interest that's built, especially over the past 3 months. We've seen a lot more players kind of finding the game, and it kind of speaks to just the interesting nature of VR landscape in general, but also just App Lab titles, which is, there's the stereotypical kind of release pattern for a game where there's that big, initial release spike, and then the kind of sales windows spike. But we've actually seen interest grow in this game and increase over time. So it's yeah, it's encouraging for us, and we think that bringing in some of these new elements, new puzzles, new narrative pieces, like it's going to create an even more like just overall impressive and fun experience.
I'll definitely be playing it again. That's right.
Mhm.
You had
There's
me at
new
opening and
yeah.
closing.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, everything in between is going to be fine too.
Well, now I have a reason to start it again. Now I have a reason I need to finish it again.
Yeah.
You've gotten me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic we were talking about earlier, is that, you know, when you have, it's not on rails, but it's a mystery game. It's like developing story and developing mystery games where you do want people to go back to them, and not just because you release other DLC, but something that is really interesting, and you know, in terms of building out the narrative, building out, you know, bringing voice acting, bringing out other elements to the game, so that the scavenger hunt of clues is also something that, you know, completist players will want to dive back into. But you know, it's not a wave shooter, right? So it's not a wave shooter. It's not Beat Saber. So in terms of these things, you want to be able to create items and create a narrative that people will want to go back to and spend more time in that theater. So yeah, I mean, despite some of the stuff I said earlier about how it's challenging to keep expanding, like to echo Eric's point, like we're gearing up this year no matter what to bring those changes to the game and to make a big push to get on the main store no matter what.
Okay. No, that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And have you guys, in all seriousness, received like the tech standards that they require? Because we have heard that.
Or any actual official communication from them saying, "Hey, we hate your game. Hey, we love it, but it needs this." Is there any actual words, or just shadow whispers? Like they've been
No,
silent?
we haven't heard anything directly. And so, and we're part of the Oculus Start program. Like we're on their Discord. Like we've talked with different people at Meta, but it's always we've never received anything specifically technical or non-technical about their criteria.
Okay.
So
No.
I will say that on, you know, like on their main Oculus thing, there are certain like technical requirements to submit to App Lab, and there are slightly different requirements to submit to the main store. You know, they do have that listed for like your build, but it is stuff like, you know, frame rate has to be blah blah. You know,
That's
you
what
can't
we've
have
always
these
heard. I think 90
settings.
frame rates or something.
Yeah, you know, I think last time I looked, it was like App Lab was like 60 FPS and main store was 72, right? So it's like a little different, but not hugely. And there's certain like you know, it's like, oh, if you have these elements that might cause motion sickness, you have to have these elements to balance it out and stuff. And we like from like the list that they have, like we completely check off all those things. I mean, we went into it not aiming for just being able to hit the App Store. We went for it being like, okay, let's make sure we're checking off the main store requirements as well. So those we pretty much reach. So, you know, from a technical standpoint, if there is something wrong with it, they would really have to come to us with that, because it's like, I mean, from the list, we seem to be doing all right, unless there's like a secret list as well.
Yeah, that was the only thing we could ever think of.
Technical specs.
But
that's
it doesn't.
one thing
It doesn't even feel like it though when
no,
you play
well,
the game.
now we know that technically it's not failing any of the criteria. It just kind of further puts me into a haze, I guess.
Yeah.
No, this one's a mystery to me. No pun intended, but
It definitely is. Have you both have a Quest Pro, right?
no, we
Unfortunately,
wish.
no. We are
due to budgetary reasons.
yes, we are peasants
Yeah.
over here with our simple and efficient MetaQuest 2.
Yes. Until
Well,
the
I would say
comes
that
out.
I would say the industrial side of Top Right Corner was able to provide Top Right Corner with a Quest Pro for a different client. And I was in LA last week, and I showed Eric Atlas on the Quest Pro. And I mean, Eric, what was your feeling after watching? Because you've never seen it before, upresed and sort of in a different, with better memory and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, my first impression was like, holy crap, this is our game. Like it played so incredibly well. And like I've played it so many times on the Quest 2, and just, speaking to the kind of elaborate QC process that we went through, prior to releasing on App Lab, we really spent a lot of, like, Nathan just, I mean, really just put in so much effort on just refining every little mechanic. And it's a massive arena that you're going through. There's so many different types of interactions, and we didn't want people to feel confined to like, you know, limited types of interactions either. So there was so much effort that went into that. And yeah, seeing it on the latest hardware was just incredible, because not only like visually was just the fidelity of everything so great, but you know, the actual like the way that the mechanics and everything translated to the new hardware was super encouraging too. And I think seeing that last week was like, okay, like, you know, now we got to double down on increasing the game and adding all these new, you know, refinements and additional narrative pieces, because it's, yeah, I mean, I can see how it's future proofed in that way too, to, you know, any new hardware releases or anything, it's going to translate very well.
Man.
Yeah, I was like, that's such good news and a gut punch all in the same paragraph. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
No, I'm jealous for some of the pro users. I won't lie, especially if this is a great example of, look, if you have a pro headset and you play this, you're gonna get to enjoy it just a little better than those with the Q2. But that's also
Well, I
good
would
news
say,
Sorry, keep
I
going,
would
Dan.
say too, like it's not just on Oculus though. I think you know, we are developing a version that will be on the Vive XR Elite. There are things that people kind of think are like that Quest Pro, not even competitor, but Quest Pro equivalent. And so as those headsets move in that direction, as Eric said, we're confident that it'll look great on any of those elevated headsets in the future.
I just like knowing it'll be available on everyone else's headsets, not just limited to the Quest.
Well, interesting on that. The game's available on Steam, right? So
It's available on Steam.
For my own curiosity, what's the player base been like? Has it been like 50-50, you know, Quest users and Steam, or do you see like a dominance in Quest users?
No, it's actually been almost like 60-40 Steam, to be honest, which is interesting. I'm pulling up the stats while we're on the Zoom. I do check them every morning, but so
sounds like us with our podcast stats.
Yeah, it's been to be really direct. It's been 60-40 Steam. I think that, and the Steam sales recently over the past few months and the winter sales have been really helpful for getting a bigger user base onto the game. Like I think we even had almost like 15% of the people who've played it on Steam have played it in the past, you know, month and a half. There was a big uptick towards the you know, towards December, but I think it's been mainly 60-40 Steam to Quest, and a lot of that's just because you can't find it on App Lab. So I think, you know, a lot of our numbers are on Steam versus the App Lab. But I think in terms of getting those 20,000 downloads on App Lab, that isn't a combined Steam Vive port App Lab number. That would have to be solely App Lab. So that's kind of why we have that goal in mind.
20,000 downloads that's a big nut. I don't care what the game costs or what it is. I'm just like, Jesus God, that's a big number.
Oh yeah, but
yeah, and also, you know, one last thing with the, you know, the fidelity and stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we, you know, kind of learned and developed when we were making, you know, the new game we've been working on, that we're like, oh, we can backport some of this new stuff into Atlas as well. So there will be with this new upcoming features as well, a visual upgrade to Atlas as well, using some of this new stuff that we've been able to do with with this game and some stuff we've learned.
Game's gonna be.
Well, maybe you could talk about that a little bit, Nathan, before we move on to some other stuff. It's like what are you most excited to bring into the new version?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like ways of rendering that allows us to just upscale the textures on certain things, you know, like the walls and the floors and the ceilings and all that, to improve like the lighting and stuff even farther, like definitely with dynamic objects. I think the lighting for static objects is already pretty amazing, but to increase that for dynamic objects as well, and just across the board, give us even more leeway to add some visual stuff that we had to remove because it was just too much. But now it's like might be able to add some of that stuff back in, and we're definitely excited for that to be for the Quest users.
Yep. Yeah, there's some really sophisticated stuff going on with transparencies and with lighting based puzzles and um, particle and smoke effects and things that you don't even necessarily pick up on, that just when you play the game and you say like, oh, it feels cinematic and it feels polished, it's like, there's a lot of back end work that Nathan has put into it to get it to that point. Just considering Quest hardware and the fact that we want it to be playable on pretty much every headset.
Yeah, that's actually something we had commented when we reviewed it, that it felt like that there was some really good tricks with lighting and stuff like that to improve the graphics. But when you tell me the graphics are improving, I'm like, man, that's kind of something
pretty damn good.
That's kind of something that stuck out to me.
I have to go back and look at my score on that one.
Yeah, because like I remember for an App Lab game thinking like, wow, these are really tight, polished graphics.
Yeah, it's better than some store games for sure.
And now you're telling me they're going to improve. I'm freaking excited. So something I'm dying to ask. The game launched last year, I think April of last year, so about a year. It was kind of your first release on the MetaQuest store. I guess, has there been any lessons that you've learned, in the past year of release? And maybe if you could go back and, it was April of 2022 again, and you're about to release, is there anything that you would have done different?
It's a very good question. I don't know if there's anything that we would have done completely different with the game. I do feel as though we've learned a little bit about how VR games are pretty much entirely marketed on TikTok. There's a huge. We would have invested a lot more into TikTok marketing.
Yeah.
But it is interesting how, like, our game as a slow burn, sort of an intelligent. And this is not a knock on Gen Z, Nathan. Okay, this is not what I'm saying here. But I feel like
I am not
people
Gen
we
Z.
hear all. No, yeah, I know you're a baby millennial, right? All right. Anyway, so the
I'm over here 26, like, uh-oh.
I'm 52.
Yeah, no. We've heard that everyone says, I mean, this is from publishers, I'm generalizing, but publishers and other VR marketers, a lot of people have said, you gotta pump TikTok content, you gotta do influencer stuff. And then we've seen a lot of it, and it's all very, I would say, like arcade and shooter based games that are very much, in the Beat Saber kind of milieu. Whereas we know the average person who plays Atlas is pretty much a 37-year-old male, like 70-30 male female, and mainly in their 30s. And so it is kind of a double-edged sword of, like, I think we could have done some stuff to get things out there earlier, but I don't know if TikTok, I don't know if those marketing efforts that a lot of people in VR are pushing would have had success in that way. I don't know if you disagree with that, Eric.
Well, I think the struggle. Sorry, I was gonna say you can't really show the gameplay of the game because then you're spoiling puzzles too. So it's kind of tough in that.
Totally.
And stuff.
Oh yeah,
That's
no,
Totally.
it was tricky cutting trailers and materials and all that. I think we did find some good success in building like a little bit of hype behind the game before we released, which just takes so much just sweat equity in general to get to that point. But through like Reddit and Twitter, and just kind of, we've all been kind of involved in following the VR community for a long time, and certain influencers and everything, just going back to some of the promotional stuff that we did in Belko VR and all that. So I think that was great. Yeah, I mean, from a game perspective, it's like, obviously there's things you have to cut as you develop the game that you would have liked to include, but that's just the nature of any type of creative development. But yeah, I mean, that's why we're excited for this year, and we're excited to bring some of those elements that we did have to kind of compromise on back into the fold and really create the version of the game that we kind of, with all the bells and whistles and everything that we kind of set out to create initially.
I'll be watching this real close then, because I'm excited to play it again anyway. So,
and weirdly, anecdotally, it feels like that. Just talking with people, it feels like people are a little bit more willing to, for an App Lab game, dive into like a shooter multiplayer game than like a story narrative based games. Just because I think people have gotten burned by badly made ones, that it makes you like, I don't know. People see shooter, yeah, they'll spend a couple bucks. But if people don't know for sure a story's good, then they're a little bit more hesitant. So I'll be the first one to say, like, damn, the story's it justifies the cost. You know, it's a damn good game. Hopefully that word can keep getting out more and more.
Yeah,
Thank you. I mean, we're
go ahead.
good.
Dave. Oh, okay. I was gonna say, like, I think it's gonna be hopefully very exciting for players. I recommend them to jump in now, play through the game, and then when we do release this big update, whenever that will be, that adds, it is going to be, like you mentioned, a new beginning, a new end that kind of emphasizes some of the story elements, but then also throughout the game adding almost some cutscene-esque moments, some more story moments that are kind of not just on a notepad, but more, voice acted, some animated stuff going on, and throughout the game. So I think it would be fun to, like, go through and compare, and, like, once the update hits, go through it again and be like, oh, here's all the new stuff that wasn't here before, and you kind of will appreciate it even more, because you've played through it already.
Yeah, not only are there some new kind of plot elements that we'll be bringing in, but I think things that were a bit more subtle before are going to, the pieces that people probably missed kind of before are going to have a much bigger and a more arresting presence.
Now I'm actually sitting here wondering how much of it did I probably miss and didn't even know I missed.
See,
stuff.
we're pretty good junkies with, like, searching
finding
everything and
the
reading
stuff.
every
Yeah.
note. And I remember we were commenting a lot on the story to each other in party chat. So
Yeah.
I feel like we caught a lot of it, but you never know. We might have missed a couple of things,
I'm thinking so.
but we're kind of fiends for that
I'm
stuff
starting to
too.
think so. Yeah, it'll be. I agree with if you know an update's coming and you can play it right before the update.
Oh,
I've seen people go apeshit for an extra like 8 seconds of a movie. Dude, it's never been shown before. It's 8 seconds
watch the whole 2.5 hour film.
for something you never
Yeah.
even noticed. Yeah.
Well, I think that we want to have an update that hits by late spring. We're kind of getting into that now. I say late spring, early summer. But I think in terms of this too, like, one thing that we really like is, like, I'm definitely like an old Hollywood sit-up junkie, so I love stories of, like, the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and that was a huge inspiration for this game. And I think there's a podcast called You Must Remember This about old Hollywood that I would definitely recommend. But I think we're also looking to have that kind of pre-code studio era. There's so many stories and different Easter eggs that we can put in that relate to this story or relate to other actors or films and kind of explore a narrative with. So I think it's expanding the idea of the Atlas mystery, but also, other people have gone through it and stuff like that. So there's a lot of narrative that we want to bring to this place that a lot of players just really enjoyed spending time in with the atmosphere. So that's a huge focus for us.
No, again, I mean, I'm nothing but excited.
I can't wait. You guys have done a good job getting me hyped for a game that, a story game I've already beaten. Now I'm excited. I want to go back and play it prior to the updates, and you've got me locked in for after the updates.
Of course.
But there's something that you kind of have alluded to a couple of times throughout the episode about a new game in the works as well.
I just actually highlighted again.
It made a little note, circle, exclamation point, I understand.
Is this true?
Yeah, is this true? Like,
is this true?
Is there any details about this that you're able to talk about, like a name or what the concept is? Is it an Atlas 2? Is it a sequel in the same universe?
Tie-in.
So
it is a different movie tie-in. It is not Atlas 2. It is not Too Fast, Too Atlas. It is. So we kind of sat down after Atlas and looked at a number of things that we love about other VR games, and I think we didn't really have a pros and cons list or a Venn diagram, but we kind of talked about things that I think make VR games successful. And I think the social aspect to it, the burgeoning multiplayer aspect to it, and the, horror games or games that are intense, which also plays into what we're doing at Welcome Villain. And so we came up with an idea that we're super excited about that ties into a film that Welcome Villain will be releasing in the first half of this year. And this is a game that we are putting out. It will relate to the film, but it's also, I want to make it clear that it's not a one and done tie-in. We've done a few of those in the past, but this is a game that we want to put out and we'll continue to support because we really believe in it conceptually. So it's something that will be related to the movie, but it's also going to go on and have a life of its own. And this game is a multiplayer survival horror game that we have created to be very, very specific in terms of, and Nathan, you can speak to this, but just games that we love in VR. And it's not, you're not copying different aspects, but you're just looking at things that we think have worked and trying to adapt and adopt those for this property.
Yep. Yeah, we've looked at games that I mean, obviously the puzzle genre is something that we love, but we've had a ton of fun in games like Resident Evil 4, games like Five Nights at Freddy's even. And we thought, how can we thematically tie this into this film project that we're doing, but also, build a multiplayer experience that kind of trying to stay as vague as possible, but pits you against some really, really intense foes to collaborate on in both like a puzzle scheme kind of way, but also just pure fun combat. So we're really, really excited about this. So we think it's going to be crazy and gnarly and very, very intense.
Ooh, I'm so excited. This
Yeah.
is
I don't even know what to say.
I know this is genre we loved Green Hell, which isn't a horror survival game, but it's very much a survival game. And when there's a leopard jumping at you from the Amazon, it's a horror game, in my opinion. And the only thing we've ever wanted in that in VR is co-op, because I'm a wuss, and handling these scary moments by myself isn't always the best. But I'll have whatever normal or horror elements attacking me with a buddy next to me all day. That's awesome. So I am so freaking excited to finally have that genre like available and checked off. Yeah, I'm dying for this. And is this planned to come out this year, or is it still way too early to be talking about that stuff?
We will definitely have the first version of it out in conjunction with the film in the first half of this year. Like that might be more of a demo. I wouldn't say, I don't like using the word early access because I don't think it's appropriate for a game that's more of a vertical slice of what the game is. And I don't like to misinform on that way, but we will have a demo that captures like the very core functions of the game, which is designed to be a repeatable segment of time where you have to survive for a certain amount of time in an environment. And it's designed either to be enjoyable by yourself or with co-op. So certain things are easier, certain things are harder, I think, with co-op, but it's designed to live on its own, but also designed that you can team up with a friend or a random person to try and survive survive the shift, I would say.
Yeah, there are plenty of wave shooters and whatnot in VR, even on main store. Yeah, and I think that with this, there's something interesting in that Nathan has been really, really just putting in a ton of effort on developing a big arena for the game that I think people are going to really, really dig. But it is moody, it's gritty, and I think it's massive too. Like it's going to be like, I still sometimes get lost in the hallways of this this stage that we're building to kind of set everything in. So yeah, I think people are going to be really impressed by just like the scope of it, especially when you bring in the multiplayer element and you're kind of defending this huge space.
Well, I can only imagine you guys are probably going to have a top-notch sound score to go with it too.
Lighting effects.
Oh yeah.
And so for Nathan,
I'm scared and I haven't even played it.
Right? What's this been like to go from an escape room puzzle game and a horror survival game, or two totally different genres? What's it been like, developing this horror game, in comparison to a puzzle game?
Oh yeah, it's been crazy in all the right ways. Definitely with like with Atlas, Eric came to us and was like, here's basically all the mechanics. Here's all like what we want, and here's like how we're gonna do it. And I was like, awesome, I can do that. With this game, it was much more free form of like, okay, here's like the movie. Here's like some things we want to touch on, like can we do multiplayer? Can we do this and that? And then, but a lot of the design work and like what the specific features were very much like up to me, like what do you want to do, and and so that's been very fun to kind of, you know, put my hat in as a bit of a designer as well. And yeah, no, I think it's gonna be great. Like the whole multiplayer aspect of it, you know, it's like not only does it add a layer of, okay, now you're with someone else, it's also like, well, you're gonna need a character model and you're gonna need arms and legs, and like you can't just be floating hands anymore. You know, so it's that layer of like, you know, almost grabbing like a VR chat character and and having to throw that in there. And so that's been very interesting. And then yeah, like with creatures and combat, it's like, okay, well, you know, I mean, to keeping to VR and physics, like when you hit something in the face, it's got to fall over and act naturally, you know, like you can't just have it be robotic. So having all that, and then yeah, it's like, okay, we want to make it horror, so we have to take the lighting to like the next level of Atlas. It's like now it's like, you know, we want to be able to go through all the rooms and turn off lights individually, and we want to be able to have it where it's like lights can flicker and turn off by themselves, and then, you know, you have to, you know, fix them or something. So all of that has been very exciting, very fun, and a lot of advancements in like lighting in a very performant way. A lot of ways of how we're handling like dynamic objects and how they light is completely different than Atlas.
Mhm.
And yeah, we're super excited to show off all that. And yeah, like it is going to be like when we mentioned survival, it's not like, you know, we're setting up campfires and we're, you know, eating berries and stuff. It's definitely more of, you know, kind of like, you know,
staying alive type of situation.
staying alive,
Yeah.
and figuring stuff out, you know, building up your tools to survive the whole shift. It's definitely like, I mean, when I, you know, originally I was like, okay, what if we had something that kind of followed a lot of the principles of Five Nights at Freddy's, but we made the gameplay good, you know? And we added more action gameplay to that, and not just
Real
being...
shots fired over there, Nathan. That's
Not making friends with the...
damn.
I mean, everyone knows Five Nights at Freddy's. It's like the story's great, like the stuff is great. The gameplay is like it's very basic a lot of times.
You're not lying.
And so we wanted to be like, okay, what if we, you know, added like almost like a Resident Evil 2 gameplay to a Five Nights at Freddy's game, with some Phasmophobia mixed in there too, and see what happens.
I'm amazed you guys are going to improve on the lighting any better than you really already have.
Yeah, I mean,
crazy.
to Nathan's credit, like in Atlas, there's maybe two kind of big light change moments where you maybe throw a switch and, you know, you get the lights in the lobby turning on, or the concession stand kind of powering up. I'd say, yeah, like 2 or 3 maybe big lighting changes. And now, you know, we're talking about being able to like throw light switches on in each individual room, and, you know, flickering lights and whatnot to signal specific events. And yeah, it's massive undertaking, but, you know, in the horror space, it's just so important.
Oh yeah, no horror without. Well, I learned that as a little kid. If you turn the sound off, it's not half as scary. It still might be gory,
but that creates all those suspenseful moments. You know, tension building, all of that. That's all sound score, and the lighting is a huge factor too. That's something you guys already proved that you're very confident.
Yeah, that's why I'm like
Atlas. So
going to improve it even better.
Great. Oh no, this is going to be
just further meaning we're going to be scared shitless is what it really means.
But at least we can do it with a buddy. Now, I am biased in this statement too, but in terms of like avatars and stuff, I was
going to ask this. I already know where you're going with it.
I imagine they won't, because it's going to be on. It sounds like it'll be on other headsets and stuff too. But I'm extremely biased in that any game that incorporates the cartoony looking, hilarious meta avatars, I freaking love that moment. I can't imagine myself not smiling cheek to cheek if I fired up a survival horror game, and then I look over and I see your dude in his library looking outfit with his nice glasses.
My business suit, bro.
Yeah.
It's a business suit.
Yeah, we've not brought Horizon Worlds you know, meta characters. We've this is one we've actually created characters from scratch that are related to this to the film property, and that's definitely been an adventure. Like doing anything in Quest is an adventure, and I think that a lot of it is definitely trial by fire, and we've failed on a number of fronts, but because everything pushes through this crazy optimization bottleneck, and we've only made it harder by involving multiplayer and involving characters and AI and combat physics. So we've only made it harder for ourselves, but it really, it really is sort of an iron sharpens iron thing. And I think coming out of this, we will have some products that we're very happy with, but it's definitely we definitely don't make it easy on ourselves.
Yes, the limitations of the Quest forces the best out of you.
But developers down the road these are all, I say it all the time. It's like the developers that are really out there right now hustling in the VR market. Yeah, they're the ones that should be, and I think will be looked back upon as like, man, if it wasn't for what these guys did, when they did it, we wouldn't have been able to steal all that shit and make our shit better.
And it's like the graphical quality of the games coming out in the Quest 2 today,
it kind of
so
forces,
much better.
And it's a win for everybody in the long run.
Yeah,
but
I've just seen the quality of games, the skills and optimization for graphics just improve over time. And then you see something like Red Matter 2, where now you guys saying you're going to improve Atlas Mystery. It's like, what?
Gridiron there.
Yeah, that's the opposite case. Yeah. Grid Legends.
You guys could use your services at EA Games for sure.
Funny.
No, I don't want to go down the EA road. I'll leave it alone.
Something I'm dying to ask. I can't wrap this up and not hear this. Nathan, what is your background as well as a developer? Did you have prior VR experience before going into Top Right Corner, or is this kind of like your first game development endeavor?
Yeah, no, and I've been a player of VR obviously since it came out. Some of the first headsets definitely jumped on that and enjoyed that. And development wise, been developing, since I started learning programming. Like it's like which I found to be a very good way of learning programming for anyone who is out there learning programming, is that it's like they're like, okay, we're going to learn about arrays. I'm like, okay, how can I add that to the game I'm making? It's like, even when you first start, it's like a text-based game. And then, you learn, okay, here's how to do like some basic graphics. I'm like, okay, how do I add basic graphics to my game? And I was doing that pretty much the entire time I was making, learning programming. And then once I, got out of college and stuff, just continued to making my own games, which I also think is great. Like, another advice for other programmers out there: make some passion projects, because you can get all A's in school and still be very bad at at making games. So it's like, I think that's the best way to do it, is just like jump into Unity or Unreal. They're both great engines and very easy, even as like a one-man person, to like learn. And that's what I've been doing. And then this has been like my first major job, working with these people for a few years now. And it's been going fantastically, and I love, every time we do a new project and we improve it from the last project, it feels great, growing as an individual and as a company.
So here's a load of, are you making any cameos in the movie?
No. If they want me to,
Nathan's not. Eric has played about 4 characters in the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Eric, it's funny that is an ongoing joke. It's funny you bring that up, because neither Nathan nor I are in the movie. Eric plays about 5 characters in the movie. So.
By the time it's done, it'll be up to 8 characters.
That's too funny.
That's right. When you have masked characters, it's like, might as well just get as many cameos in as you can. Outfit change and you're good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I do want to say, like, it's funny, like the history of film and video game tie-ins, I think, is definitely sort of a rocky path, or at least it has a complicated history that we've kind of glossed over here. I think that for us, what's interesting is, I think in some ways it's changed a little bit, but whenever it's worked, it's taken a lot of thought to put into it. And so, like, for example, like, The Last of Us premieres on HBO Sunday the 15th. We talked about Resident Evil. Well, I don't know when this podcast is dropping, so I'm trying to. So we'll have premiered. I think that in terms of what we're trying to do, because everything with VR started with Top Right Corner, everything VR wise for Top Right Corner started with film tie-ins. I think that with Welcome Villain, there's some stuff that we're doing that you'll see when we release our trailer for this game. It's not based fully on the movie itself. It exists in its own world, but there's things that we can kind of do back and forth, especially as movies have more and more game engine tech inserted in them in terms of using different video game engines in lieu of VFX. Like those worlds are combining, and so we're just looking for fun stories we can tell. We're looking for fun games we can tie into film projects and vice versa. And we're just going to pick and choose like what we think is the best, the best thing for each new project.
That's awesome. And yeah, definitely video game movie spin-offs have, I'm anxiously nervous for this Fallout TV series that's coming on, I think, Amazon. It's never good when you hear like directors and stuff never watched the series or anything like that or played the games. You're like, oh no, this is headed to a bad path.
So I and it might have grown since the last time we've talked, but how large approximately, we don't need exact numbers, is the current studio for
I guess
the gaming
the current
side?
Yeah, the current team, it's, I guess with contractors, employees, and other people who are slotting in, it's around 12 of us. It's not that big, but I feel like we have a very good and well sharpened team at this point.
That's kind of the magic number we've always heard.
And it's
Around
very
10.
very manageable at those numbers as well. You start getting into the hundreds, some people aren't working, so it's
yeah, and that's with like as you see in the credits of Atlas, when it comes to like non-artists, like just developers, like programmers and stuff, we had like me and one other guy who worked part-time, and now like going back to it, we're able to bring on like a couple developers to, like, while I'm adding a bunch of the new stuff, we're able to have like a couple developers go through all the old stuff and tighten up the physics, and like spend a lot of time where like if I spent like a month just tightening up physics, then nothing else would be added for a whole month. So it's like having those extra developers that can go through and be like, hey, tighten up all this stuff, make this stuff even better while I add all this new stuff. It's gonna be like a nice process to make it really refined.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Get in the bulk of it, let them do the fine tuning, and just keep adding in the actual content itself. That's awesome.
We've also honed people too, because we have some people who are working on some VR training, but also we're doing this project for renewables energy project in Louisiana. So we have somebody working on a offshore wind. it's a VR project where you're able to go to the top of an offshore windmill in the Gulf of Mexico, and there's some other things like that we're doing sort of in the energy and education space. So we have just working on more VR projects allows you to kind of see what features work and what they don't work. And a lot of times with those projects, you are putting VR experiences and games in front of people that never play VR. Whereas on the gaming side, it's people who play a lot of VR games. So that experience is also fun to kind of get feedback and to to learn more about the craft that way.
No, we love the training element of VR being used.
Limitless potential there.
I even saw one for commercial dishwashing, and I was like, you know what?
Makes sense.
It makes sense. I mean,
Employees
you can
gonna
learn
show up
something.
on day one, already knowing the whole layout, everything, the way the equipment works, that specific model. Again, the layout, the structure, the everything.
I'll do anything in VR. It's like, why not? But if you can learn something at the same time, it's even better.
That's awesome.
So I'm just curious when these guys are going to drop a full either interactive VR movie.
That's basically what Atlas is.
I was like, well, it's kind of what they already did, but I'm saying more of that movie sense. So we'll see.
But before we wrap this baby up, Stratus, is there anything else you wanted to ask? And also, same thing to you guys. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on that we didn't go over today yet?
Me personally, I got more than I think I.
Oh, I'm so excited!
I've got a lot to ponder here.
I'm excited for what's coming for Atlas, and I am so excited for this survival.
Yeah, and you know what? And I'm happy to hear that. I would get why if there wasn't the push for the store right now, especially if you've got other projects you can work on. And but it's cool to know that there's gonna.
No, you're still pushing. Pushing.
Well, yeah, and if like these guys are doing their end to push, then we'll continue to push on our end.
Like I said, I'll die on that hill screaming. This is one of this swordsman bocce time.
I just want people to have the exposure to it,
Yep.
and then be like, oh shit, and then see actually when it came out and start feeling foolish. But
Dragon Fist VR Kung Fu, that's another one also good.
Yeah.
And anything you guys want to touch on that we didn't go over yet?
Well, I think like we're definitely, we're always been pushing for the store because although, we've sold, several thousand copies on App Lab and then on Steam, we've also sold a bunch, but
You got bills to pay.
It's so night and day that if you're on the store, like the amount that you're selling, even in the first week with actual exposure, which is dwarf what we've done to date. So I think it's not just not the financial and bills to pay, but that it's not like we're going to get on the main store and then stop making VR games. I mean, once we actually have a game on the main store, we will be, redoubling our efforts because there's a clear financial viability to it instead of it being something that we just believe in. So I think that's why like we are pushing full on, this quarter and this year for that.
I can't wait.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, if you look at the budget of these games, like imagine what we could do with main store budget.
Yeah. No, exactly. We talk about that all the time. Just having, also on the marketing front, like main store placement gives you access to, certain tools too that we would be able to leverage to help spread the word. So, things like that, we would kind of double down efforts.
Yeah, I'll stand by what I said before, that I think story-based games are the genre that needs the official store approval the most in order to get consumer attention. It's like free multiplayer game probably needs the official store the least, all the way down to on the other end, like a story-based game. Sometimes people are skeptical of a bad story, but if it's on the official store, they go, well, it's going to be good.
Something we've seen, and it's weird, but almost all the games that come from App Lab and go to the store,
kill it.
You'll look at them and they'll have the blue check mark.
Top rated.
They're top rated, highest, most downloaded. So it's like
top selling deism.
It's like once people see it in front of them, all of a sudden they gravitate to it.
The ones that graduate from the App Lab store kill it on the official store. It seems. But yeah, no, thank you three for joining us today. This is the second time we've had,
well, after we get to see their finished project coming up, we're gonna have them on again.
Just gonna say, second time we've had Dan and Eric on, first time we've had Nathan on, but somehow I don't think this will be the last time we have them on.
No.
Not after
once the new versions are out, Nathan, you should do not a shot by shot, but like literally like a level by level breakdown of how we made stuff. You do a real
do a retrospective
craft episode. Craft episode.
That's awesome. And anytime you guys, like I said, want to come back on, talk about what's either coming next or the game's ready to release, whatever, you guys have doors always open for Top Right Corner.
Open invite, of course.
One of the most.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd say one of the most polished and professional studios on App Lab. It's remarkable that game hasn't hit the official store yet, but I think I've said it 100 times this episode, so I'll shut up now. So thank you guys for joining, and other than that, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and stay tuned for what's coming next week. Ciao.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
And don't forget, check out Atlas Mystery on App Lab. We'll put the link right in our show notes, the episode description, but, whether you check it out on Steam or, actually, how about go check it out on the App Lab store? That way we can help with
boost up some App Lab.
That official MetaQuest push. So check you all out next week, and don't forget to check out Atlas Mystery.
Take care.